Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Stories on Tape podcast. I'm your host, Josh Robinson, and this week I am very, very excited about our guest. It is Miss Rebecca Covington Webber. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi.
How are you this morning?
I am good. How are you?
Good. I'm good. Thank you.
Good.
So I want to give everyone a quick little background on you.
Okay.
And then I'm going to turn it over to you to give us maybe a little more detail or anything I might have missed.
Okay.
So Rebecca grew up in Kentucky.
Yes.
She went to school in Tennessee.
Yes.
We have that connection, grew up in Tennessee. So love that. Love that.
Love it.
And now she's performed all over the place. She's been in Thoroughly Modern Millie, Ain't Misbehavin', Mamma Mia, Motown on Broadway, the Carole King musical, and now most recently the Peggy tour of Hamilton.
Yes.
Done it all. That was a mouthful. My goodness. So Rebecca, give us a little more, fill in all the blanks that I missed. Give us a little more
All the
about
blanks. Well, there's not too many blanks because I'm 20, so I don't even understand how I've done this by the age. No, I'm kidding. I went to Belmont University. I have a Bachelor of Music in music theater. I grew up in Lexington, Kentucky, as you said. I grew up playing the violin. I started playing violin when I was 2. So I always grew up around music. And I didn't even know that going into theater was like an option in terms of career. I thought it was always like, it was something that was fun to do for me. And I went to a creative art school. I went to SCAPA, School for Creative and Performing Arts in Lexington, Kentucky. And it was like a sandbox of like artistic endeavors. And so I went there playing the violin, but then I was like, oh, I can take a voice class. Oh, I can do a dance class. I can do blah, blah, blah. And so as I like immersed myself in more and more art forms, I realized I wanted to do it all. And then I went to Governor School for the Arts. I was in the inaugural class of music theater in the Governor School for the Arts in Kentucky. And that type of like intense training and doing music theater every day really, it made me realize that that's how I wanted to spend my time. That's how I wanted to like get better. I wanted to be better as an artist. And it was something that I never got tired of, and it always fueled me. And so then it was there that they like invited us to college fairs. Because you have to understand, at my age, we didn't really have the social medias growing up. We didn't really have, so there was no research other than like YouTube. So it's like, there was no like, oh, look at this college. These are the people that have graduated from this college and done this. It was all like you had to go and do it and see it in person. So from Kentucky, it was like a 3-hour drive to Nashville. I went to Belmont, and being there just like broadened my artistic scope as well. It was like I got to see other people doing it and how other people did it, and like what were their goals? Where were they from? And what shows are we going to do? And so it was like a lot of auditioning, a lot of summer stock. And then I was like, oh, I have to do this. So after graduation, I did the non-equity tour of Thoroughly Modern Millie. It was a bus and truck tour. We closed the tour in Newark, and my mom came, and we took the subway to New York, and I moved in with like 3 roommates in like a 2-bedroom apartment. And I was just like,
yes.
Yeah, I was like, this is what I have to do. And so, thankfully the grind is the grind, and I just never get tired of it.
I love that. I love that. So this podcast all about storytelling.
Great.
And you get to do that every night.
Yes.
Or every performance, I should say.
Yes.
So would you say the Governor School that you went to, is that where you kind of found your love for storytelling on stage at least?
Yeah. So yes. It's like every step of the way kind of cemented the journey, because I love to sing. I love to do shows. I love to dance. And it was like, every step of the journey started to marry those things all together. And so it was at Governor School that it was like, oh, we're going to do a big opening number. We're going to do a thing. And so like it was, I just didn't realize you could do all of it and tell stories through all of it.
Yes. Yeah. So you find out you've gotten a role. You find out you booked a gig.
Yeah.
You're getting to tell a new story, or maybe a story you've seen, but kind of put the Rebecca spin on it. What's the first thing you do when you find out you're getting a new role?
Okay. The first thing I do when I found so If it's a show that has been done before, normally I will listen to the soundtrack and figure out kind of what the bullet points of the story what the bullet points of the story are. And then kind of get like a rough outline, and then obviously then read the script whenever it's given to me. And then kind of sort of figure out, all the questions I want to answer and all the things that I want to answer for myself. And if I was an audience member, like what questions would I have and how do I dig into like those angles of the story?
What makes you excited? What gets you kind of like, oh, this is really happening? What is there a point in every process where you're like, oh, I found it, or oh, it's starting to click? When does that happen?
I feel like that for me, I have found to be different every time. Most time it's like it's like the building blocks happen before I get in a room. And then I feel like once I'm in a room and on my feet, because there's so much exploration to do, especially with scene partners. And once you're like in an atmosphere. So for me, it's finding the different depths once I actually start telling the story. And that's like really fun for me. And I try to not let that stop. There's not a point I feel like in terms of in a show or in performances that I feel like I found it all. I always feel like there's like a new person to see, a new reaction to feel, a different way to say something. So I enjoy the expansion of the story or the different ways to tell a story from performance to performance. I find that to be a lot of fun. I know that that's not everyone's process, but I do find that to be fun for me.
Yeah. And so you've done quite a few shows, as we mentioned earlier. And I can imagine that there are days where you're like, okay, we're doing this for the 6th time this week. And so do you from time to time kind of look for those different little things? Do you talk with your scene partners before, like, hey, I'm going to try this? Or do you kind of just like go with it and see how it kind of not mixes up the scene, but kind of gives it new life?
I go with it and see. And I find that to be fun because that's what makes it real. I feel like for me, the pre-planning doesn't really work out. And for me also, the like spontaneity of it doesn't always work out. But I find that to be fun because, I feel like that sometimes the stories can feel like they could get stale. And thankfully, I've been blessed in my career to do a lot of long running situations, a lot of long running shows. And, I never want it to feel like, oh, we did this yesterday. There are parts of the story and like there are some things that, yes, we did this yesterday. We did this the day before. We got to stay safe. We're not going to kill each other. But I think it is fun to kind of like toss a ball towards someone and see how they volley it back. I find that to be a lot of fun. And so I like to play. I love it.
Yeah. I love it. And going back to process for just a second, is there 2-part question, favorite part and least favorite part?
I'm not sure that I have a least favorite part. I really do enjoy digging into whatever meat is there. Might be some dry, little, like not a lot of meat on the bones, but that's all right. I'll make do with what I've got. But I find just trying stuff to be fun, whether that's like something, whether it's a new work and like, I get to like just find something, or it's something that's like really well established and I get to put my spin on it. So I'm not sure that I've found anything, thankfully, that I would consider like a least favorite. But I really enjoy playing all the women in Hamilton, because I feel like just in terms of like the lift of the show, 8 shows a week is really hard for the entire cast. So I feel like every time you do the show, there's someone different on. There is someone who's telling the story a little bit differently. So we get to like, ooh, what's that? Let's explore that little niche, that little crook in the story. And so like I really, really enjoy that it's not the same all the time, so it doesn't feel mundane. It is very much like, oh, okay, someone else is on and we get to do it this way, or someone else is on and I I kind of feel this. Or even when the same person is on, I love that kind of with our cast. I'm not sure how other companies work. It's like sometimes the look lasts a little bit longer. And what does that do when it's like the third beat of it instead of the first beat of it? And so I really do enjoy playing these women because I feel like they all have something very important to say, and they all have like some meat that we really do get to dig into. And I love how attentive our company is to each other and to the story, and to maybe finding surprises where we didn't find a surprise last night, you know?
Yeah, I love that. And you're part of a special sisterhood, I would say. You have gotten to perform all three sisters in Hamilton. And I don't think there are many people who could say that. Yes, exactly. A few dabs worth. Is there like a story of on stage or in rehearsal or something where, a little behind the scenes of like, oh, this happened, or, you know, it wasn't expected, or it clicked. It was like, oh, this is how I'm going to play Eliza, Peggy, who have you?
You know, one of my favorite, it's like my favorite and my least favorite moment in the show is Philip's death in the show. And, you know, it's something that like, it's as Eliza, it's the scene work when she has her back to the audience that I find to be the most important, like, jumping point for the scene work of the show in Quiet Uptown. And one of my favorite things that has happened in my process is, I'm doing my work with my back to the audience, and one of my castmates catches my work and plays with me. And so it really propelled me. We weren't even facing the audience, but it was just about the story. It was just about catching a cast member's gaze and understanding the work and the story, and that we were propelling ourselves to another place. Because it's like, we weren't even doing it for the audience. The audience couldn't even see the work that we were doing, but it was just that part of the story is just important as the next part of the story is just important as the next part of the story. And I think that's what makes good scene work, good scene partners so important, because we're not telling necessarily the story just for the audience, but what is the story for ourselves that then we're giving to the audience. And so I think my favorite part in terms of playing these women and in terms of being in this show is that the story isn't just told on zero. The story isn't just told center stage. The story is being told in every nook and cranny of the show. And I think that's what makes it so fun, because, you know, they're all three very staged differently. And so like to tell the story from all three different perspectives is really, really cool to me. It's really cool to see how different it is on stage right versus stage left, or like standing towards the front or standing towards the back. It just, the story is so full circle, and it's all encompassing of everyone doing the work. And I find that to be really exciting to witness in all different angles.
Yeah, I love that. And so if you've seen the Disney Plus recording,
Yeah.
You've seen the show,
Yeah.
but I think what was so special, I got to see it when the tour opened back up in San Francisco back in August.
Uh-huh.
That was my first time ever seeing it live.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it was mind-blowing in and of itself, but you get to see, like you're saying, there are people standing on stage. There's a second level that people are like constantly standing on that you don't really grasp in the recording.
Right.
But to me, it tells the story so much more.
It really
and
does.
It's like all these people are overhearing things, or all these people are giving little glances. And is there a moment when you're not necessarily stage center, but you're standing on that second level, or you're standing, like you said, stage left, stage right, that you think still, if an audience member catches that moment, it's helping tell the story?
You know what? It's not me standing. So right now I'm playing full-time Peggy Mariah and still covering the other sisters, Eliza and Angelica. One of my favorite things that happens on the surround, which is the upstairs the upstairs part that you're talking about is when Mariah starts singing, Lord have mercy, when Say No to This. James Reynolds is up on the surround the entire time watching everything before he comes downstage with the letters. And it's like in plain sight. He's literally watching it in plain sight. And I'm not sure that audience members necessarily see him. And so that's one of my favorite surround moments right now, because he's there. So is he a mastermind? Is he watching? Is she following orders? Is she doing this by choice? Just the fact that he's up there watching it, it really makes you ask so many questions. And the fun part is that we get to play with the answers every time. Yeah.
Yes. I think that's what's so special about this show in particular, is there are so many moments like that where one person will think, oh, it's, he told her to, and another person's like, oh, he didn't know. He just walked in and saw it happening and then came up with this idea. For me, it's always been the end when Eliza gasps. Yeah. Why does she gasp? I want to know why you think she gasps.
I think there's a couple, once again, it's one of those things that there's different ideas. Some people think it's her final breath. Some people think that she is overwhelmed with the breadth of work that she's done and she's able to see all of her work. Some people say that she is ascending to the most beautiful place and thing that she has ever seen in her entire being. And it's her ascending to the next level, whether that's life after death or just death or seeing Hamilton again or being reunited. I like to choose that it's her ascending to and seeing the most beautiful thing she's ever seen, and who's there, and what does she say? What does she see? Who is the first person she sees? And whatever that life is after death, for me, it's heaven. And who is the first person she sees when she enters heaven? And is she excited about it? Is she sad about it? Is she overwhelmed by it? And, the questions are all there. And I think the answer is different every night. Sometimes it's my grandmother or my brother, or, it's you get to just be in the moment and kind of open your eyes and look up there. And it's what is that? And so I like to just kind of answer that question every time. And that's what that breath is for me.
That gave me chills. I love that. I love that. So speaking of Eliza, one last question, and then we'll kind of went away from Hamilton for a little bit. Cool. But your first night, if you remember, performing Eliza, she's the last person on stage to make a sound. She does the gasp. Yes. Lights go out. Yes. What goes through your mind? Well,
my Eliza debut was with Lin-Manuel Miranda in Puerto Rico. Right. So there was a lot happening there. But, for me, this audition process and getting into the show was really tough. The audition packet was really hard for me. I found it to be very, very challenging, and I found it to take a lot of hard work, which, it was something that the first time I auditioned, I wasn't prepared for. And this final time auditioning for the Aunt Peggy tour, I felt more than prepared for. And so that gasp, I was so proud of myself. I think I was so proud of knowing that for some reason and somehow I deserved to be right there at that moment. And I worked hard for that. And so those lights go out, and it was just kind of like a deep breath. It was kind of like my shoulders went from my earlobes down to a little closer to my chest. And I was just proud of myself. And, it's these women in Hamilton have taught me a lot about fighting perfectionism and working towards being present and just telling the story and understanding that the story is of utmost importance, and it's not about a perfect performance. It's about good storytelling. And so, I continue to learn a lot from these incredible women in the show. And so I think at that point, it was just immense pride and a big release for me. Yeah.
That's amazing. That is, yes, I can. Just we did it. We got
Yeah.
through it. And you got to perform with the man who wrote it, which is a pretty special thing that not a lot of people can say of any show.
Right.
But
yeah,
that's amazing.
It was quite the experience, and I'm so thankful that I was able to be a part of that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, do you have a favorite character you've gotten to perform? Is there someone that like you look back on and you're like, I would do that again. I would go back and be her again.
Do you know what? I do. And it was just about the entire experience, but I played Grace and Annie at the Alabama Shakespeare Theater in Montgomery, Alabama. And gosh, I would do that a million times over. I found it to be so much fun. I just loved it. I loved it.
Yeah. What is there? Was it the cast? Was it the audience every night? What made it special to you?
It was the cast and the story. So I became really close with my Annie. I had so the guy who played my daddy Warbucks, Charles Wallace, I got my equity card doing Ain't Misbehavin' with him in New Jersey, like right after I graduated college. And then here we were reunited in this story. And so it was the story, which I wasn't very familiar with before I auditioned, and the cast. It was just something, it felt very natural. I loved working with all the little girls. I loved working with Annie. It felt like an all-encompassing experience. And the adult cast was incredible. Like I felt like it felt very comfortable. And it felt like on stage and off stage, we were all very comfortable together. And I really, really enjoyed that.
Love that.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier you moved to New York.
Yes.
Soon after Millie, right?
Yes.
So then walk us through like what was happening between then and maybe your first tour. I also know you got to perform at the Tonys,
I did.
which is a pretty special thing. So kind of walk us through all of that. Give us a little timeline there.
Yeah. So let's see. I closed Millie, I think, in 2006, and then I was in New York. I was auditioning a lot, and it was a lot of like, the grind, the struggle, but it never felt impossible. So it was just like, we're just going to keep pushing through this. It was a lot of EPAs, ECCs, and like getting my face in front of people. I got an agent pretty quickly after moving to New York. And then I did a workshop of Shrek, the musical, before it went into full production. And then I was just auditioning a lot. And I think in like 2007, maybe, I'm not sure. It all kind of blurs together. I was in final callbacks for the national tour of Avenue Q. I was in final callbacks for Mamma Mia. I was doing Shrek. Like, there was a lot happening. And I remember I lived on 152nd and St. Nick, I believe it was. And there's a funeral home right there on like 150th, like a couple blocks. I was walking in the subway and I was standing in front of the funeral home, and my agent called, and they were like, "We have an offer for you. You bring offer Mamma Mia." So I'm sitting, literally, when I tell you I'm sitting on the steps of a funeral home, I actually mean that I'm sitting on the steps of a funeral home. And it was like, "You're being offered the national tour of Mamma Mia. This is the offer. This is where you're going. You're going to be flying out. You're going to be moving," and blah, blah, blah. And so that I was kind of overwhelmed, and I'm sitting in front of a funeral home crying. I'm sure like people think that there's someone in the funeral home that has died and I am close to, but no, it was just my first production contract. And so, yeah, that's when I got my first production contract. And then I came back to New York, I think in like 2009, and I didn't make my Broadway debut until 2013 with Motown the musical. That's where I met my husband. And that's where I performed with the Tonys. I was a part of the Marvelettes, and the Marvelettes performed the opening number of the Tonys with Neil Patrick Harris. And then I was also part of Martha and the Vandellas. I was one of the Vandellas. And our show actually performed Dancing in the Street, which is another song that I was featured in. So I got to perform in 2 numbers on the Tonys. It was at Radio City Music Hall. I know the Tonys have gone back and forth, but we were at Radio City that year. And yeah, that's how I performed at the Tonys. And it was like opening a show in New York and doing all of the award season and the Tonys. It's really exhausting, and it's really something incredibly special that I'll never, ever, ever forget.
I'm so jealous. As a theater kid, I can only imagine like the hard work, and I'm sure there's not a lot of rehearsal before the Tonys. I'm sure that's like a very whirlwind few weeks getting ready for all of that. But I love watching every year. So it's just fun. So cool. That's so cool.
They make it look so smooth, but it's really like you're bussed in, you're escorted, you stand in a line, you walk on stage, you're escorted right back out, right back to a bus. Like it's, the way they have it down to a science is really incredible, how everything comes together to like make it look like what it is. Theater magic is really incredible because that thing is down to a science.
Amen.
Yes.
Amen. So the big question I always ask people, why do you think storytelling is so important?
I think storytelling is so important to me on stage because I like to tell stories for people who don't know how to tell stories and who like to see stories. And so I think it's important that we honor, people who have maybe gone through experiences of the stories that we're telling. That we honor the shoulders that we stand on in order to be able to tell these stories. I think about a show like Motown, and it's like those kids who were signed to Motown, the Jackson 5, the Marvelettes, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, they never thought their stories would be on a Broadway stage. They never thought that people of color would be able to tell their stories on a Broadway stage. And so it's important. It's important, I think, to me that like, even though some of these people are long gone, their stories are still important. The backstory is still important. How we got here is still important. And I think that's really cool that we're able to tell these stories. We're able to put on these costumes and honor, most of the shows that I've done, I get to honor real people. Now that I say that, I'm like, wait a second. Motown, Beautiful, and Hamilton, they're all based on real people. And so it's really cool that I get to tell stories for people who couldn't tell stories or people who didn't get their stories on this platform or in this medium. And so I find that to be a great privilege to be able to just to have the medium and the talent and the blessings and the opportunity to tell the stories. And I think that that's important. And I think, you never know who needs to hear the story at this moment in this way. And so I just think it really is important that we get to tell stories for people who can't.
And so, like you said, a lot of the stories you've gotten told are people, real people.
Yeah.
Have you gotten the chance, obviously not with Hamilton, but have you gotten the chance to like hear from those people or meet those people or people like connected to them in some way of the people whose stories you've told?
Yeah. So Carole King would come to our show a lot, come to Beautiful a lot, and she would talk about her experiences, and we would get to talk about, because I played a Shirelle in Beautiful, and we would talk about her interacting with the Shirelles, and she would sit and talk to us for hours on end. The same thing with Mr. Gordy in Motown. He would sit and talk to us. I played his sister, Gwen Gordy, and I was able to meet her grandson. And, he was like, you played my grandmother on stage. And so like, I have been able to meet some people through these shows, people who are still living or relatives of the people. And it's been really cool. It's been really cool to feel like you represent something so much bigger than yourself,
And has that kind of helped you tell the story more after meeting them? Is it, or is it just kind of like okay, I'm doing them justice. The people are proud of me.
I think for me, it kind of grounds your footing in reality of being like, oh, this is real. This was someone's grandmother, or like, this is someone who sang a song that changed a person's life. And so like, it just makes you kind of like straighten up your spine a little bit and be like, oh, wow, this is, it just reminds yourself that this is real. And it's like, there's footing to this, there's grounding to this. And so it's just like kind of a dose of reality. I think for me it was. I'm sure for other people, it may have hit them a little differently.
Yeah. And are there stories you're hoping get told or that you want to tell in the future?
Yeah, I try not to put the cart before the horse in terms of like wanting to do more or wanting to do something else. I really do want to do, I want to originate a role. I want to originate parts. I was a part of a workshop of Preacher's Wife, it's been one of my favorite experiences to date in terms of putting a story together. So I really hope that story gets told. But I think in terms of what I want to do, I just want to do good work. And it doesn't matter to me if that's on a Broadway stage or if that's off Broadway or wherever we end up. I just want to do good work and I want to tell good stories. I like being proud of my work. I like being really proud of like the shows that I'm in or the places that I'm performing. It's really important to me to be proud of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think you should be very proud. From what I've gotten to see on tour with you, I remember the first time I heard you as Angelica.
Uh-huh.
I was selling merch, folding t-shirts out in the lobby, and in Satisfied, you did this crazy riff that I had never heard done before. And I stopped what I was doing and I turned and looked at that monitor and I said, that was amazing. And so I get excited every time you're on for one of the sisters. And now that you're playing Peggy every night, it's fantastic.
Thank you.
But yeah, it's been a pleasure getting to watch you perform and tell the story.
Thank you.
And so a couple more questions, just tour life in general.
Yes.
You've been on tour how long now?
Well, with Hamilton, we have been on tour since August of last year. So like 9 or 10 months.
Yeah. Okay. And then you guys did Puerto Rico before that. And then you did that sit down in San Francisco before the pandemic hit. That's right.
Yeah.
Okay. And so you're traveling with your husband, Donald, who plays Burr every night.
Yes.
You've got, when I read your dog's name, Ella Frenchgerald,
that's her.
I about fell out of my seat. I died. I love it so much.
Thank you.
And so tell me, what's it like touring with a family? What's that been like?
It's all of it. Yes. The answer is yes. So it's me, Donald, our 1-year-old, Donald the third, and our 7-year-old French bulldog, Ella. It's fun. So like I'm in a bit of a transition now, going from off stage to on stage every night. And so like, it's looking for housing. It's like figuring out where we're going to live. It's the weather, like where's the car going to be parked? Where do we get and we also travel with a full-time nanny. And so she's also a part of our circus equation. But it's reminding me to stay present. It's literally the same thing that I'm learning on stage. I'm learning off stage. It's just don't get ahead of yourself. Change is okay. I'm going to say that again for myself. Change is okay. It's okay for plans to change. I'm not good at that part.
Same.
Golly, I'm not.
It's not fun.
It's just not fun. And so, it's just really taking it day by day and donating as much stuff as possible in every city, so we're not traveling with so much stuff. But it's just like it's staying present and appreciating the surroundings, appreciating the different cities. The weather here, we're in Spokane, Washington, and it's beautiful. And getting outside and just taking it all in and not taking any of it for granted, really.
Yeah, there are many things that have happened since I joined the tour that I'm like, I never even had to think. I've never thought I would need to think about this.
Exactly.
And now it's like, great, I've got 2 suitcases in a trunk.
Yep.
What can I move and what is staying or being donated?
Exactly.
Because
in every city, you're like, you know what? It's not worth it. I'm just going to get rid of that. I'm just going to get rid of that. And so I'm not a minimalist, and it's really tough for me. And so I'm learning more and more every day what I can live with and without.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yep. So is there anything you're looking forward to coming up, either on tour or projects people can be looking out for, or just anything you're looking forward to?
I think right now I'm looking forward to sunshine. I'm looking forward to getting to Southern California and Honolulu for the holidays.
Yes.
And I'm looking forward to at some point getting home, wherever home is. Right now we have a home in New Jersey, and that's the assumption, is that we're going to end up back in New Jersey. But I'm just looking forward to where life takes us, and trying to understand, like, whatever it is, it's all a part of the process. So I think right now in specifics, I'm looking forward to sunshine, and I'm looking forward to more work that I can be proud of. And I'm not exactly sure what that is yet, but I'm excited about whatever it is,
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And if people want to follow your story,
Yes.
Rebecca, where can they find you social media wise?
You can find me on Instagram at RoRoWebb. That's RoRoWebb. Roro Webb. That's me.
I love it. You'll see all kinds of pictures.
Yes.
The Ella is there.
Ella
D3
is there. Yes, everybody's
Hamilton's
there.
You'll see it all.
We're there, and we post when we can. But we're there, and I love getting messages. I love talking to people. I love meeting people, and it's all a part of the journey.
Mm-hmm. One more question.
Yes.
Speaking of meeting people,
Yes.
Is there a favorite fan interaction you've had on tour or in New York that you kind of sticks in your mind?
A favorite fan interaction. So we don't get to do stage door because of COVID. So back in the day, pre-COVID, we would do stage doors in San Francisco. And I think my favorite interactions would be meeting brown-skinned kids at the stage door that would be like, I've never seen myself on stage, or I see myself in you, because I feel that so hard. Like I said, when I grew up, I wasn't exposed to a lot of live theater, and there wasn't social media. We didn't have access to people in the way that people feel they have access to other people that they look up to now. And so I think my favorite thing about the stage door was meeting kids and feeling like they had access to me and they could talk to me, and meeting each other in person and knowing that each side of that was real. Like I was real, and I wanted them to know that hard work could make your dreams come true. And I love seeing kids and reminding me that I was there and hard work made my dreams come true. And so yeah, I think those were my favorite fan interactions. I can't think of one specific and I'm a crier. So I feel like everybody that I would meet would be crying. Not everyone. A lot of people that I would meet would be crying and overwhelmed with emotion, which made me cry and overwhelmed with emotion. And so I love those times. I love those times together, and meeting real people and being able to see each other and interact with each other. Those are my favorite times.
Well, Rebecca, thank you so much for this. I cannot wait to see where your story takes you. I can't wait to see you tell more stories. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Bye. Thanks so much for listening to the Stories on Tape podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Stories on Tape Pod and Twitter at Stories on Tape. You can also watch each episode on YouTube. Just search for the Stories on Tape podcast. Now, if you have a storyteller you think should be on a future episode, or a story you want to share, email me at storiesontapepodcast@gmail.com. And don't forget to keep following our guests and their stories too. Links to their social medias are in the description of the episode. Can't wait to share more stories with you.